everyone, welcome back to Mark on Motoring. First of all, I'd like to take the opportunity to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year. I'm filming on the 26th of December, Boxing Day, and we've got a very rare, nice, clear, sunny day, quite mild, no salt on the roads. I thought it was the perfect opportunity to get the car out for possibly one last drive of the year. It'd be quite sad actually to put the car away. The car hasn't actually appeared on camera for quite a long time. I think we did the power flow exhaust video when we had that fitted. That's just over a year ago now. Quite happy with that as well, by the way. Prior to that, the car was reviewed, but that was really early on in the days of this channel. So yeah, car really hasn't been on camera much at all. Anyway, it's a time of the year for reflection, and we're going to have a look back through some of the events and car reviews and things that we've done this year, as well as revealing my favourite car that I've reviewed this year as well. So we'll pick this video up back at base. Cue the music. Well, it doesn't seem like a year ago that I were doing a video just like this one, a bit of a roundup of everything we'd done in the previous year. Now, towards the back end of 2022, the channel had actually seen substantial growth throughout the year, but then things did tail off a little bit, sort of the end of November into December. Now, I have since learned that this can often happen in YouTube. It can be very seasonal, especially as we approach the festive period. Obviously people busy doing other things, not sat at home watching YouTube. As a creator though, it can actually be quite disheartening when you're putting videos out there and you're scratching your head wondering why are people not watching. Now, as we went into 2023, it was the winter months, and obviously there aren't very many car shows on during the winter. Now, when you have a channel that's built around filming at car shows, that can be a bit of an issue. One thing I was able to bring you though, in fact I think it was the first video of the year, was a car review. Towards the back end of the previous year, we'd had to part ways with one of our dailies that we'd had for, I think it was about 11 years. We ended up with a hire car for a little while, a Vauxhall Corsa, and although it's not the kind of thing I would normally feature on the channel, a modern Corsa, I had the car and I thought, why not? Somebody may be interested. So we took out a 1.2 litre 3-cylinder turbo Corsa and did a bit of a review on that car. The video started off a bit slow, but yeah, it does seem to get consistent views, so obviously somebody does like seeing that sort of thing. We did actually start off 2023 with some rather sad news. Ken Block sadly passed away in a snow sports accident. Now, I'll be honest, I weren't a huge Ken Block follower, even though he was something of a household name, but it seems he was not only known for his skills behind the wheel of the car, he was quite capable when it come to snow sports as well. Now, in his honour, the NY500 Cafe over in Pickering actually held an event. There was also some merchandise on sale that was affiliated with Ken's branding, with funds from that going to his charities. Now, we had a look around at the variety of vehicles that was attending there on the day, and did my usual style of video where we had some interviews included in there as well. Now, I had hoped to go back to the NY500 and do some more filming, and I still do hope to at some point, but that was the only time throughout 23 where I did actually get over there and film. I did end up at the Motorist in January, which is another venue that's actually quite close to me. The first one I attended in 23 was the Saturday Motorist Club featuring Renault. I took the Megane Coupe along there and got to speak to some owners of various other French cars, and also got to take some photographs of my yellow coupe alongside a yellow cabriolet of the same era, which was quite interesting. I think that's probably the first time in a quarter of a century anyone has actually bothered to photograph those two models together. Now, as mentioned earlier, we did have a hire car for a little while at the start of the year, and when that hire car went back, there was a period of time where my wife was actually using my modern daily car. So the Megane Coupe was actually brought into frontline service at a time of year when ordinarily I wouldn't encourage it, especially on days where there's salt on the ground. The car did have to get me to work in conditions where it was as low as -4 degrees, and also the heater matrix needs replacing in that car, and I can assure you, trying to de-ice the inside of a windscreen in a car with a heater that's not working at its best, well, it's certainly challenging to say the very least. Now, I did notice earlier in the year that the Megane was actually using a little bit of water. Now, that car never uses any water. It's had a very, very minor oil leak in the time I've had it, but never anything that you would notice on the dipstick. I'm only aware because I look under the car and I have seen the odd drip from time to time. But I did get concerned. I got to the point where the car needed the water topping up every time I drove it, which, as I say, just isn't normal for that car. There was no evidence of the coolant and oil mixing, which was a good sign, but on further inspection the head gasket was starting to fail at the number 1 cylinder, so the car was quickly withdrawn from service and sent off and had the head skimmed. Had a bit of other work done as well. I think a couple of valve guides needed sorting out on there. The HT leads, actually, one of them fell apart when removed, so those had to be replaced. And while the car was having all that done, we had the usual service items done as well, so things like spark plugs, oil and filter change, that sort of thing. As we came into the spring months, we actually did something on the channel I've not done before, and that was a new car reveal. Back in 2022, I actually replaced my Fiat 500 Twin Air 105 with a new car, and I'd actually not gotten around to filming and unveiling on it, partly because I'd not been in the car for a while, because, as I say, my wife had been using the car. So we got round to finally filming that. It was only a couple of minute long video just introducing the car. It also gave me an opportunity to practice some cinematography skills, which is something I like to do, obviously. One thing I try to do to set the channel apart is show the vehicles in a way that, I don't know, really sort of sets them off, brings them out in the best possible light. Now, I have been asked just the other day by a viewer about a review on that car, and that is something that I'm planning to do over the winter, so hopefully I will have that video out for you within the next couple of months. With the weather improving, obviously we did start to get back into the normal show season as we know it, and I think that one of the first of these videos we did was Drive It Day. Now, Drive It Day was actually a 3-part series that I filmed. And I didn't just turn up at a venue and start filming. In fact, I'd done the same event the year before at the Aero Club and done just that. Now, we had a very, very wet start to the year, which may sound very familiar because we've had a very wet end to the year as well. And a lot of the venues really did suffer, especially when on grass. I could think of at least 3 venues where it was just a no-go area. If you took a car on there, you would have got stuck, and many of the venues ended up closing the show fields as a result. The plans for Drive It Day actually ended up being changed at the last minute from the Aero Club to the Motorist. What I actually ended up doing was meeting a group from a local classic car club at the Redbeck Motel in Wakefield, and actually got some great rolling footage of some of the classic cars en route there. We rolled out of there over to York, met up with some other classic car owners, and then drove over to the Motorist in Sherburn and Elmet. And I say it made for something a little bit different, a little bit more interesting than the usual type of video that I would have filmed on a car show event. Another video I actually filmed over at the Motorist was the Furious Driving Social. Matt Richardson made their way all the way up from Kent for one of his social events, which always attract lots of visitors. Now that happened to be the last video I filmed at the Motorist this year, strangely enough. It's quite odd considering that back in 2022 I filmed quite a lot of the Motorist throughout the year. I did actually attend an event in the area that I've not done previously, the Tadcaster Classic Car Show, and it turned out to be a really good event, one that I was really glad that I attended. It was a classic car show, but the focus was actually on MG and celebrating 100 years of MG. Now a representative from a local MG club actually helped me out by introducing me to a few of the owners, and we actually got a really good cross-section of MG vehicles, right from pre-war stuff up to sort of MGs from the sort of 1990s, that era, which was really good to get all those different vehicles in. Obviously as the summer came, we really got into the full swing of things, and I was invited along to another event that I've not attended before. I went to the Citroën Car Club Northern Rally. Now I don't actually own a Citroën, in fact I've only ever owned one Citroën, which was a DS3 D-Sport Plus THP 155. That was the 1.6 litre turbocharged engine that found its way into the Mini. It was a really good event. They actually held it at Wetherby Racecourse in Yorkshire, and they actually had it over 3 days. I went along to the last day, which was the Sunday. We had great weather for that event. I spent a lot of time chatting with the owners, looking around some of the cars, and of course got a few interviews in to boot. At the end of the day, they actually had an award ceremony as well, which was really interesting. They sort of categorised all the different vehicles, different eras of car. I think they had modified Citroën as well. And they announced the winners in all these respective categories. Now, they actually had a new category for Best Non-Citroën. There was actually a few, I don't know, maybe half a dozen people attended. Not in Citroën. Some of them were maybe Citroën owners in the Citroën club, but didn't have, if it was cars they maybe didn't have on the road at the time, or simply just enthusiasts like myself. There was a couple of the cars were modern cars, but I went along with the 97 Megane Coupe, and there was actually a really nice Peugeot 306 Cabriolet there as well. But the Megane reigned victorious and actually got awarded Best Non-Citroën. Also led to me now having the claim to fame of actually being able to get a non-Citroën into the Citroenian, which is the Citroën Car Club's magazine. While we're on the subject of the Citroën Car Club, it's a great owners club. I've, as I say, I've met a few of the owners and seen sort of first-hand what goes on in that club, and yeah, you can see why it's an award-winning club, and I know they've won the Best Club magazine a few times as well, so if you're into your Citroens, you know, do check those out. Now, I did a few events this year that perhaps didn't prove quite as popular, certainly in terms of videos. I got invited along at the last minute to the Fully Charged show. I was basically given a ticket by a family member to go along to that. EVs are not something I really spend a lot of time on, but I do accept that they are now part of mainstream motoring, and for some people do work very well. In fact, my dad's had an EV since 2017 and absolutely loves it. So I went along to the northern version of the Fully Charged show. They'd done a southern one earlier in the year that had been quite a successful event. The northern one didn't seem quite as big an event. There weren't as many manufacturers attending. I did manage to film a few cars and interviewed someone on the BYD stand. But that video, alas, just didn't do very well. I'm guessing viewers of Mark on Motoring are probably not EV enthusiasts. I did another video with the Harewood Drivers Club. I've done a few in the past with them that have proved reasonably successful at the time for the channel. This particular one was a sort of smaller event. We went out to a local farm shop cafe. I had a look around a few of the cars, but As I say, it weren't a particularly big event. It was one of the sort of shorter videos I did. Didn't get all that many views. Likewise, for a classic car event I attended at Squire's Bikers Cafe at Sherburn in Helmet. Again, did a little 3-part video. There was a good mix of vehicles. We even had some classic commercial vehicles. But again, the videos just, for whatever reason, didn't seem all that popular. Thankfully, though, we did have some more popular videos and some really good classic car shows. I attended a classic car show at Sowerby Hall, which is one I've wanted to do for a few years and just hadn't gotten around to doing. So that turned out to be a really good event, and the video did quite well for that event as well. Again, over on the East Coast, I attended the Bridlington Lions show on the cliff tops. I have actually done that one the year previous, so I had no reservations about going and attending that one again. The unfortunate problem on the cliff tops is if you don't get the weather, you really do know about it. Whereas the previous year, the weather had been really, really good. As soon as I arrived for the event this year, the heavens opened, the wind picked up, and it was pretty miserable. Thankfully, the weather did pick up throughout the course of the day, and I managed to interview the owners of some interesting vehicles, including Sharon, who owned a car that won the car of the show, a Bertone X19, which is a car that I've wanted to get a closer look at for quite some time. I did actually get a sit in that car as well, and to my relief, with the seat pushed all the way back, I did just about manage to shoehorn myself into that car. It's a car I would actually very much like to have a drive in at some point as well, and it's been on my list of cars I'd like to own for quite some time. I did another classic car show I've done, in fact for 3 years running now, is Walton. The Walton Classic Car Show seems to go from strength to strength, and it's a show you sort of always guaranteed a good turnout, and the videos always seem to do really, really well from that show as well, I've found. I've also done a couple of other local events over at Heath Common with the unofficial Yorkshire Classic Cars group on Facebook. Again, if you're in the area and you're into classic cars, I always say do check that group out, because they publish all the dates of the local shows. So throughout the summer, some weekends you can take your pick of several different shows, the vast majority of which will all be listed on their site. Did a couple more new events as well. One was the Crow Nest over in Dewsbury, which was an event I'd seen photos of in previous years, really, really fancied doing and just hadn't gotten around to. So I made the effort this year to go and do it, and again, didn't regret it. In fact, I saw some interesting vehicles that I'd not seen before, such as a Bristol. I had the opportunity to interview the owner of, which, again, it's always nice to feature different cars. Likewise, an early Honda CRX, again, a car you just do not see anymore, and I've not seen another one at any of the classic car shows that I've done to date, so it was really, really nice to be able to feature those. I made it back to photo again, Festival of the Unexceptional. Again, it seems like YouTube suicide if you're a YouTube creator in this segment doing car videos, if you don't go to photo. And in fact, someone actually did remark at some point afterwards, did anyone actually attend who wasn't a YouTuber? Because on the day, as you can imagine, you could see quite a lot of people walking around filming. Again, with these events, I'm always thinking, what can I do to make my video a little bit different to everyone else's, because nobody wants to watch the same video 10 times over. And again, I managed to mix things up a bit. We got a little bit of rolling footage as a bit of an intro to the event. Managed to squeeze in a few interviews again. Because it's such a vast event though, with over 1,000 cars, by the time I got to the concours I was even later than the previous year, and it really was a quick look around. Although I did get to interview Sean Hudson from Morsels and Motors, who actually took second place with his Metro, which was really good to see. I liked how he'd done the display where he'd shown all the things that he'd removed to restore the car to full-on factory base model spec. Now, I did of course do a couple of French car events throughout the year as well, two of which were brand new events. and all three of the events I attended were actually new to me. So Autos de France over at Alton Park was a brand new event for 2023. Quite keen to attend this because the people behind this event also do Festival Italia down at Brands Hatch, which I've done twice before, and I knew it was a fantastic event. Now the good thing with these events is that you actually get a good car show out of it, because you get a good variety of vehicles that relate to whatever that show is, which in this case was French cars. But you also get motorsport as well. So, I mean, on this particular event there was 2 CVs, which is always fun to see racing around. There were also other categories. I think there was junior saloon cars and a few other things that was on. So there was plenty to see motorsport-wise throughout the course of the day. Of course, the highlight to these events is the parade lap at the end of the day. Now, we did have the misfortune of the heavens opening mid-afternoon, which sadly did see a lot of vehicles go home, but a few did stick around, and when it was safe to do so, the decision was made, and we did get to go out on that parade lap, which was a relief, because it really is a highlight to the event. And as I say, being that it was the first one of the year, I would definitely encourage you to attend that one if you've got a French car next year, because, as I say, I think it was a cracking event to say it was the first one, and I think it's only going to go from strength to strength. Also, the fact that it was at Alton Park this year, which is sort of in the northwest, it's a lot of the other French car events, the big events, were down in south. So if you live in the north and you're looking for a French car to attend, I highly recommend you look out for that one in 2024. Another event that was brand new was Brooklands French Day. Now, Brooklands Museum is a fantastic venue that I've wanted to visit for quite some time, and being a French car event, it was the perfect excuse. So we fueled up the Megane Coupe, hit the road early that morning, and actually turned that 400-mile round trip around in the day. The car actually did end up sat in traffic on the M25 on the way home, and I'm pleased to say the temperature gauge stayed dead centre. The car was completely unfazed by it, and we made the journey home without any issues whatsoever. The event itself, again, was a cracking event. Again, lots of great French cars on display. Not only the usual sort of Citroën, Peugeot, Renaults that you might see, but some really obscure stuff like Delage as well. I don't really know a lot about pre-war cars, but I was able to speak to someone from the Delage register and got a really insightful look at some of these really interesting vehicles. Another thing that was held there at Brooklands on the day was a hill climb. People who turned up, if you registered in the morning, you had the opportunity to take the car up the hill climb. It's not something I actually did myself, but I did manage to film some of the cars, including cars like some of the Delages that people were taking up. There was obviously things like a couple of Alpine A110s as well. I saw one of them go up, which I think was possibly one of the quickest cars to go up. It certainly looked fast. And I even got to see a Phase 1 V6 Clio take on the hill climb as well, which was quite a spectacular sight. Now, one of the more established French car events that has been running for many years that I wanted to attend was Simply French all the way down in Beaulieu. Now, even I wasn't crazy enough to try and attempt this one in a day. Now, bear in mind, the year previous, I actually drove the Megane to Vilvoorde back, where the car was built in Belgium, in 36 hours. What I did this year, though, is went down to Beaulieu, actually took the family so we could have a night away, stayed in a hotel not far from the event, attended the event on the Sunday, and then the very next day drove back up. Now, in true British style, it was absolutely cracking the flags on the Saturday when we drove down in the car that has no air conditioning. And then on the morning of the event, the heavens opened and it absolutely sailed it down. So I did what anyone else would do, and while most people were ducking inside the museum, I was out there with my camera filming some of the cars. Well, I'd gone all that way to do that, so why waste time and come away empty-handed? Fortunately, the weather did pick up through the course of the day. We got some interviews in again with some interesting cars featured that we've perhaps not had on the channel before. We got a nice Matra in there, for example, which was a particular model of Matra I've not seen at other events. Now, I was quite impressed because, as I say, we did the round trip over a weekend, and to my amazement, with its 60-litre fuel tank, the Megane actually did the round trip on only one tank of fuel. I had anticipated having to stop and fuel the car up on the way home, but on the way back it became apparent that the car was probably going to make it. And in fact, it was only the day after, when I drove to the petrol station, that as I was pulling on the forecourt, the warning light came on, having covered in excess of 500 miles. I'm really not sure if my modern Mark IV Megane would have managed that, and I know for a fact the Fiat 500 certainly wouldn't, because when we used to go down to Brands Hatch, usually you would get to Peterborough and you would see all the Fiat 500s and Abarths all hitting the fuel pumps to complete the rest of the journey back north. Now, as we go into the winter months, obviously there aren't as many car shows on, but one highlight is, of course, the Classic Motor Show at the NEC near Birmingham. Now, for the second consecutive year, I've actually helped out on the Renault Owners Club and Renault Classic Car Club stand. Now, I've been a member of the Renault Owners Club for a few years, and this year I've become a full member of the Renault Classic Car Club as well. Now, I did get the opportunity to venture off the stand at a few points throughout the day and do a bit of filming. Now, of course, I knew I wouldn't manage to film the entirety of the event, so what I actually did manage to do was film some of the French car stands. So we did one video dedicated to the Renault stand. There was a video featuring Club Peugeot UK. They were celebrating a few milestones there, 40 years of the 205 and 30 years of the 306, and they had a GTI 6 on there, which is actually owned by Bobby Pryor of BBC Radio 2. They also had a 504 Brake Riviera, which was actually a car created from, I believe it was a scale model or drawings of the original concept that was built back in the day. So an exceptionally rare car, which was great to see on display there. Ian, a representative of that club, did an interview, told us a little bit about some of the vehicles that they had on that stand. Likewise, I spoke with a representative, Mick from the Simca club, and also had a look at a few of the Matras that was on sort of back-to-back with the Simcas on the stand. I am hoping to actually speak to Mick again in the new year and do a more dedicated video featuring some Simcas, because it's one of the, well, both Simca and Matra, a sort of French brand that I've perhaps not done as much on as I may well like. Of course, you can't feature French cars without also taking a trip over to Citroën, of which there was actually a few clubs there. Unfortunately, due to batteries running out, memory cards filling up, and all the usual problems that you have trying to film at a large event, I didn't manage to get to all the stands, one of which was 2CV-GB, I think it was. That was basically a club devoted to the Citroën 2CV. But I did get to speak to a representative from the Traction Owners Club. I love Citroën Traction Advance, even though I'm not into pre-war cars. That's a pre-war design car which actually continued in production sort of in the post-war years, and that's a car I would actually like to have a go in at some point if the opportunity was ever to arise. Of course, I also visited the Citroën Car Club as well, and had a chat with Ben and a few other members of that club about some of the vehicles that was on display on that stand. Now, this brings us on to some of the other things I was doing throughout the year, because it wasn't just car shows. We actually did a few car reviews as well, beyond obviously the courses that I'd done earlier in the year. And this time it was probably vehicles that are probably more along the lines of what you're accustomed to seeing on this channel. So the first car of which was a rather rare specification Rover 45 saloon, a V6 connoisseur. So it was the more luxurious spec, but most importantly it was fitted with a 2 litre version of the KV6 engine. Now, it seems like complete madness cramming an engine like that into a car of that size. I know Volkswagen did actually have a spell of putting things like V5s and V6s into Golfs. Generally V6 engines don't find their way into smaller cars, especially in this day and age where engines are sort of getting smaller and getting turbocharged, and many engines now are either 4 or even 3 cylinders only. Now, the Rover 45 in question was at the time owned by Joseph Lloyd, who some of you will already know from the Lloyd Vehicle Consulting YouTube channel. It was up here for the Furious Driving Social, and later on that day gave me the opportunity to take the 45 out for a quick spin. Now, that car is no longer with Joseph. It's actually gone to another YouTuber, a channel you may well have heard of, Boaty's World. Now, I do actually occasionally drop in on some of Boaty's live streams late on at night, which I do find quite entertaining. But there are also other videos on there, some of which do feature his fleet of cars, which seem to be predominantly MG Rover. So if you're an enthusiast of MG Rovers, or even if you're just on the lookout for something new to watch and you want somebody who's sort of quite entertaining on camera, yeah, check out Boaty's World. I also got the opportunity to take out a Peugeot 406 with a V6 engine. But what really stood out about this car was its transmission, because unlike many V6 cars of this size that come along, this one didn't have an automatic. It had a 5-speed manual transmission. Quite a rare thing, as I say, these days with an engine like that. Again, a video review I highly recommend you check out to see how I got on with that car. The Peugeot wasn't the only French car I took out this year, which probably doesn't come as much of a surprise to you, because I got offered a Citroën Saxo VTR. I'd been offered this car quite a while ago actually. In fact, the car had briefly appeared on a video at the Citroën Northern Rally earlier on in the year. Now, my friend Ben, who owns that car, said quite early on, yeah, by all means, you can take the car. I've got a cam belt to do on it, but once that's done, drop me a message and we'll sort that out. So that's what I did. And I actually left it quite late. It's actually only a few months ago I finally got round to filming that car. But the Saxo was obviously quite an iconic car of the late 1990s and early 2000s. Many a young driver bought Saxos, whether it be one of the lower spec ones. There was obviously also a VTS model, the 16 valve one. But for most younger drivers who wanted something that was sort of quick but a little bit more insurance friendly, the VTR really was a sweet spot. And there weren't many retail parks or McDonald's on a Sunday evening where you wouldn't have seen a Saxo VTR back in the day. I'd never actually driven one in period, so it was great to have a go in one of these cars sort of 2 decades on and see how the cars stack up today. Now, the final car review that I actually managed to get out for you to view this year was a Mercedes. Now, I did review 2 Mercedes-Benz the previous year. I'd done the 190e, which is owned by Simon of Lot 76 Cars, and I also got the opportunity to take out an SLK R170, the first generation of car with the 200 compressor. That was the supercharged engine. I got offered another SLK, and I was a little bit in 2 minds initially. I thought, does the channel need another SLK video? Now, as it happens, the 2 Mercedes videos have been some of the most successful videos on this channel by a considerable margin. In fact, to say that the channel is known predominantly for car shows and car reviews, about 2/3 of the channel's watch hours over the past 12 months have been from car reviews, and of those reviews, a substantial amount of those have probably been through the Mercedes videos and a Fiat 500 video that I'd done quite a while ago. Now, the SLK offered to me this time, again, was actually owned by another YouTuber, David of Davy Down the Road, which is quite a new channel, quite a small channel, but obviously one of the cars on his fleet is his SLK. This one is a 2nd generation R171, and this one is a 350, so it's the larger capacity V6 engine as opposed to a 4-cylinder supercharger like I've driven before. So it allowed me the opportunity to compare a different generation of the car, and obviously one with a very different power plant as well. Now that video has actually gone out only in the last few weeks, and remember what I said at the start of the video about December being sometimes a bit of a flat month for YouTube, and initially take up of that video was really slow, but thankfully over the past week it does seem to have started to pick up a little bit again. So if you haven't checked that video out already, by all means please do so. Other things that have been going off recently off camera, the Megane Coupe, I had a temperature coolant warning light that kept coming on. That light is actually done off the same sensor as the temperature gauge, which seemed to be working fine, but the first protocol seemed to be to just change the sensor, so I did that job. Didn't really make a big deal of filming that, or at least not to the extent of a dedicated video. Problem I have is I'm not a trained mechanic, so it requires a bit of thought when I'm doing these jobs, which isn't always conducive to making videos, even though some of the first videos on the channel were me doing precisely that. The other issue is my car is on a driveway at the front of the house with people passing by, and again, having tools out at the front, trying to film, having camera equipment out there, and the fact that people are generally quite inquisitive about people working on old cars at the front of the house, and also when people are filming things, so it doesn't make it easy to produce videos of that nature. But we did get that job done, and it did seem to cure the problem, and I did manage to get a few little clips which I'll try and insert for you to see. The Megane, the tax runs out the end of December, and the plan is, as in previous years, to put the car on sawn for a few months. We'll actually see if we can get beyond a couple of weeks this year before I end up taxing it again. I know I'm certainly going to miss driving the car, and it's going to be quite painful looking out of the window and seeing it sat there wanting to take it out. It was quite excruciating a few weeks ago when we had frost on and salt on the roads, and I really wanted to go out and drive the car, and it just didn't seem fair to do that. It'll give me the opportunity to do a few jobs as well. I have actually got a heater matrix I've had sat in a box since last winter, with all that were going off with the head gasket last year and the considerable amount of money I had to spend on the car. It just didn't get done, even though it would have been a good opportunity to have it done at the same time. It just didn't get done, so I am going to try and see if I can sort that out this winter. In the new year, what have we got coming up? Well, I have actually already filmed you another car review, an original Ford Puma, the one that came out in the late 1990s, which is a car that had evaded me in period. I had already driven the first generation of Ford Ka, or KA, and I did actually get the chance once to drive a Mark 1 Ford Focus, but the Puma was the one that sadly I'd missed out on, so that was one car I was really looking forward to doing, and that video hopefully I'll have out for you at some point in January. Beyond that, I haven't really got anything else filmed, but I have had a few cars offered very recently. Some are currently on sawn, some are actually still taxed and available to drive, so I just need to get around to making the arrangements for me to go and film those cars. Another car review that I will hopefully be doing for you, which someone was, as I say, asking about, in fact just a few days ago, was a review on the Mark IV Megane Signature. So that again is a car that's taxed, that is on the road as my daily, and I will try and get round to filming that in the very near future and put that review out for you as well. As I say, sometimes people do like reviews on modern cars, maybe not from a nostalgia point of view, but probably people who are perhaps looking at buying something of that era, and just want a little bit of information about what the car is like. I've actually held off doing this review. I think if I'd have done it straight away when I got the car, initially I would have probably gave quite a negative review of the car, but having lived with it for well over a year, in fact probably over 18 months now, I can certainly give a much more balanced, rounded review about that car. Of course, there'll be plenty more car shows to come. I know tickets for Photo have just gone on sale, so no doubt I will end up at Photo this year because, well, I'm doing YouTube, and if you're doing YouTube, you do tend to gravitate towards events like Photo. I've nothing else sort of booked as of yet, but there are a few things that I am looking at, so there will of course be plenty more things to come. I went into this year not really knowing what was on the cards, and we managed to get plenty done, so I expect this coming year will be no different. I'd love to try and get in some more road trips. I've not really managed to film a big road trip since the trip back to Vilvoorde, which was obviously a few years ago now, so I would like to try and get something like that done again. Again, there's nothing on the cards at the moment. Another trip that I had hoped to do last year overseas and film, which sadly didn't come off. Some tickets had actually been booked to go abroad and film this, but as I say, it didn't happen. So whether that'll happen in 2024 or not, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, that's where we're at currently. One thing I do need to mention before finally signing off with this video is that back in November the channel hit 1,000 subscribers. I'm eternally grateful to all of you who have supported the channel throughout the year. Obviously some of you have joined quite recently. In fact, November was a bumper month. We had about 70 odd new subs against the usual sort of 30 to 40 that the channel normally sees. So November was a really big month. Channel over the past years averaged about 5,000 watch hours, so again that's all thanks to you guys who have been tuning in and watching the videos. Now I did actually have somebody as soon as I hit the 1,000 subscribers who asked me, will I be doing channel memberships? Well, channel memberships I have actually given some thought to. I'm not completely ruling them out, but the issue I have with channel memberships is, for anyone who's not familiar with channel membership, it's where you have the option to pay a monthly fee. It could be anything from a couple of quid, or it could be a tiered system where you pay a different rate and get different member benefits. The problem I have with that is that I'd be taking money off people, and at this moment in time it's hard enough for me to sort of keep on producing videos. I try to get out on average a video a week on average across the year. Sometimes I'll film a video that might be split into a couple of parts and go out through the course of a week, but generally it's one event or one car review, one video released per week. If you're having people who are paying a membership, sometimes you might give early access to videos, which again I could possibly do with car reviews, but I couldn't do that with show videos. I struggle to get show videos out fast enough as it is due to the nature of the editing required on my videos, so I certainly wouldn't have any scope to get those kind of videos out any sooner. Likewise, at the moment I can't really see how I could produce extra content that would be that I could release for channel memberships. Possibly some behind the scenes stuff, maybe something like that, a bit more vlog style, but certainly not videos on the quality that I strive to try and produce for the channel's main content at the moment. But again, as I say, I'm not completely ruling channel memberships out. It is something I will keep in mind, and I may well end up doing that at some point in the future. But certainly channel memberships is something I'm just not pushing at this moment in time. Likewise, merchandise, that's something I've not really given much thought. I know a lot of established channels do merchandisers and memberships, and they have to do all these extra things to try and generate revenue. This started more as a hobby for me, and as nice as it would be to actually earn a bit of money back towards the running of the channel, because events and things like that, accommodation if it requires an overnight stay, the upkeep of the car, fuel to get to events, it is all becoming quite expensive, and a lot of car show prices have sort of gone up. So it would be nice to earn a little bit of something back just to cover some of that cost. But as I say, in the very near future, nothing's really going to change. I just intend to keep running the channel in the fashion I have done for the past couple of years. With regard to the car events that I've attended this year, it would be really difficult for me to quantify them and to sort of choose a top three, so to speak. Many of the events I did enjoy for different reasons. Some of the new events like the Autos de France at Alton Park and Brooklands French Day, for example, were quite unique, with them integrating a little bit of sort of track action with the motorsport at Alton Park and the hill climb at Brooklands. Also at Brooklands, after the event, I actually got the opportunity to sit in an old McLaren F1 car, which was a real highlight and something normally at museums you don't often get to physically touch the exhibits, let alone sit inside some of them. Again, things like the Citroën Northern Rally, that had a completely different atmosphere again, but it just made the event sort of unique. If I really had to pick one event, I suppose, that, should we say, exceeded my expectations, then that would probably be the Weighton Wolds Classic Car Show. Yes, it was a classic car show, very similar format to other classic car shows I've attended, but it just seemed really well organised. The show field was sort of marked out with rows with sort of individual bays for each car, so the presentation really was excellent. And the scale of it as well, it wasn't too big, wasn't too small, it was sort of big enough that there were plenty to see, but small enough that you could get round everything. And the diverse range of vehicles as well. They had tractors, and they had a really, really good range of classic cars. There were vehicles like the Ford Consul, things like that that I'd not seen previously at other shows. There was also a selection of classic Japanese motorcycles as well. So again, there were just certain things about that event that differentiated it from other similar events. Now, earlier on in this video, I said that I'd be revealing my favourite car of all the ones that I've had the pleasure of reviewing this year. Now, so far on the channel, going right back to the very beginning, I honestly can say I've not really had a car to review that I've really disliked. Yeah, there's been some that I've liked more than others, but there's been nothing that I've really thought was dreadful and that I wouldn't want to ever drive again. But every now and again you get into something that is a car that you think, yeah, I really would like another go in one of these. If the opportunity were to arise, I'd like to spend more time behind the wheel. Possibly even cars where you find yourself coming home afterwards and scouring the ads, just looking to see how many are available and what sort of cost you're looking at. And sometimes the cars that you may not necessarily expect to like. Take, for example, a few years ago I went and drove a Triumph TR7. Didn't really have high expectations of it, but after driving it, it was better than I expected it to be, and it did spark my curiosity. But as I say, that was a few years ago, so it's not going to be this year's top pick. So without further ado, my top pick of the cars I've driven in 2023 is the Peugeot 406 V6. This may not come as a surprise to some of you, being that it's well known that I do quite like French cars, but to others it may come as a bit of a shock, considering the cars I have driven this year. As I say, I've not really had anything. I suppose the most uninteresting car I've had, the most normal car, would have been that Corsa at the start of the year, but everything else that I've had to drive has been a little bit unique. Take, for example, that Rover 45 fitted with a V6 engine. Very rare car, very unusual to have a car like that with that sort of power plant. Likewise, Citroën Saxo VTR, the warm hatch of the 1990s that everybody wanted. Or the Mercedes-Benz SLK 350 of all things, a V6 powered convertible roadster, and of course it's a Mercedes. All very, very good cars. So why a Peugeot 406? Well, the thing with the 406 is when I got in that car, from the outside it is a traditional 3-box saloon, there's no mistake in that. Yeah, some of the Peugeots are better looking than some of their contemporaries, but it certainly is no sports car from the outside. The thing that really got me with the 406 is, as soon as I drove away, you immediately forget that you're actually in a four-door saloon car. You could quite easily believe that you're in some sort of coupe, a GT car, especially with that V6 engine. It had a real sort of bark to it when you opened it up. The car was incredibly refined, but once I got out onto a twisty B road, I felt as though I'd been used to driving that car for a considerable amount of time, and I was quite comfortable driving it in pretty much the same manner down that road as I would do now and again coupe. Again, everyone likes a bit of an underdog, and I always like things that do exceed expectation, and the Peugeot 406 certainly did strike the right note in that respect. Now, I've already had some offers of some more interesting cars for next year, so who knows, let's see what next year brings, and what car I pick as my top pick for next year. I would of course like to thank all of those of you who have supported the channel, some of you right from the very beginning, and some of you have obviously joined a little bit later on. To those of you that are new to the channel, there is actually a back catalogue now of around 150 videos made up mainly of car shows and car reviews. There are of course playlists for all of these different segments, so by all means take a look through and see if there's anything else on there that takes your fancy. If you're still here, congratulations, you've made it to the end. I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time out of your festivities for sticking around and watching this video. If you have enjoyed it, do give us a big thumbs up, and as always, comments down below. I do love reading those and try and get back to people as frequently as I can. For those of you who are subscribed, if you haven't hit the bell notification, can I suggest that you do so? I did have a couple of subscribers who have said for whatever reason the videos don't always appear in the feed, so hopefully hitting the bell notification should get around that little issue. Wishing you a happy new year. I will catch you in January with some new videos, but from now it is goodbye from me.